My name is Robin, and I'm a 22-year-old college student studying political science. I live in what used to be my family's estate, a place that once echoed with laughter, Sunday breakfasts, and the warmth of my father's presence. After his untimely death 4 years ago, the house became mine alone, a bittersweet inheritance that carried both comfort and pain. Dad's death was sudden, a cardiac arrest that stole him away before I could even say goodbye. I was only 17, just settling into my first year of college. His loss hit like a lightning strike, leaving our lives charred and hollow. The silence that followed his passing was deafening, broken only by the sound of my mother's quiet sobs in the middle of the night. The house he left behind was more than a home. It was a masterpiece. 2 stories of timeless architecture, sunlight filtering through wide windows, polished oak floors that gleamed like amber. The kitchen, Dad's favorite spot, was a chef's dream, complete with marble counters and copper pots that still hung neatly in their places. He designed it himself, and every corner carried his imprint. My mother, Evelyn, was 50 then, graceful and elegant even in grief. She had always been gentle, the kind of woman who smiled through difficulty, who believed in dignity above all. Dad had ensured her comfort. He left her a generous monthly stipend of $4,000, meant to support her for life. She received it with quiet gratitude, and I admired her for how calmly she carried on after his death. In those first years, we grew close, closer than ever. She made my favorite breakfasts, fluffy omelets, warm croissants, and fresh coffee, while I studied at the kitchen table. We talked about my classes, my dreams, and sometimes about Dad, though those conversations often ended with tears in our eyes. For a while, I thought we were healing together, slowly finding a new normal. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. It was an ordinary day, classes, notes, and a long commute home. I walked through the front door, humming softly to myself, only to freeze in the foyer. My mother wasn't alone. She stood beside a man I didn't recognize, dressed in a crisp blue shirt, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. 2 teenage boys hovered nearby, both with their hands stuffed in their pockets, glancing around like they already owned the place. "Robin, honey," my mother said, her tone oddly high-pitched, "I'd like you to meet Oliver, my husband." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. "Husband?" The word slipped out, barely a whisper. She nodded enthusiastically, as if announcing something wonderful. "We got married yesterday." My heart sank. Married? Without even mentioning she was dating someone? The shock hit harder than I expected, like betrayal wrapped in confusion. Oliver smiled, extending his hand, but there was something in his eyes, something cold and self-satisfied. His sons, Thomas and Peter, barely offered a glance before wandering off toward the living room. And just like that, my world, the one built on the fragile balance between grief and healing, cracked wide open. Oliver wasted no time making himself at home. Within minutes, he was inspecting every room, running his fingers along the furniture, commenting on how grand everything looked. When he said, "We're really going to enjoy living here," I felt an invisible chill crawl up my spine. Still, I tried to be civil. Maybe Mom was just lonely, I told myself. Maybe Oliver wasn't so bad. For a few days, I even convinced myself that peace was possible, until his sons started tearing through the house like a storm. They fought over everything, the TV remote, snacks, my laptop. I couldn't study for more than an hour without hearing shouting or crashes from somewhere nearby. One afternoon, while I was buried in my constitutional law textbook, the door to my room burst open. "Get out," I yelled, startled, as Thomas and Peter tumbled in, punching and shoving. "He took the controller," Thomas cried. "You're such a liar," Peter yelled back. They knocked my papers to the floor, scattering my notes like confetti. My textbook landed with a heavy thud, pages bending under their feet. "Enough," I snapped, trying to pull them apart. "This is my room." Before I could restore order, Oliver appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. "Boys will be boys," he said lazily. "They're just learning how to handle conflict." "By destroying my room?" I shot back, incredulous. Mom appeared behind him, her tone soft but dismissive. "Robin, they're just being active. Don't make such a big deal." That was the first time I realized how much she'd changed. The mother who once defended me at every turn now brushed off chaos to appease her new husband. The tension only grew. A few nights later, Oliver called a family meeting. He stood in the center of the living room like a general preparing for war. This place needs an update, he announced. It's too feminine. Time for a change, new furniture, new decor, something more fitting for a family. I frowned. Excuse me, this house doesn't need any changes. He waved a hand. It's like living in a dollhouse. We need something with character, more masculine energy. This house, I said slowly, was left to me by my father. It's my property, not yours. His jaw tightened. Ownership is just paperwork. What matters is who's in charge, and as the man of the house. I stood up. Let's get one thing straight. You're not in charge of anything here. You live here because my mother married you, not because you have any right to this place. His smile vanished. Listen here, you spoiled little brat, he hissed. I won't be disrespected in my own home. It's not your home, I said firmly, and it never will be. His face turned crimson. He took a step forward, his hand lifting as if to strike me. My stomach twisted, but I didn't back down. Without breaking eye contact, I pulled out my phone and hovered my thumb over the emergency call button. Go ahead, I said quietly. Give me a reason to press it. The air went cold. Oliver froze, hand trembling midair. After a tense second, he dropped it and stormed upstairs, slamming the door so hard the chandelier above us rattled. Mom rushed to me, her eyes wide. Robin, please, she whispered, don't provoke him. He's just trying to find his place. He needs to feel like the man of the house. I stared at her, stunned. You're defending him, after that? She wrung her hands. You don't understand, sweetie. He's adjusting. Just give him time. That night, I lay awake listening to the muffled sounds of their voices upstairs, Mom's soft pleading, Oliver's angry tone. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now pulsed with tension. The next morning, I noticed the first crack in our old routine. No breakfast, no coffee. The kitchen was silent. When I peeked out the window, I saw Mom laughing softly over coffee with Oliver in the garden. It stung. Over the next week, her warmth faded. When I finally asked about it, she smiled coolly and said, Robin, you're 22 now. You can handle your own breakfast. You're the lady of the house, remember? It felt like a slap, a cruel twist of words. As weeks passed, I watched her drift further away. Her monthly allowance, Dad's careful provision, started disappearing into shopping bags and luxury dinners. Every few days, she and Oliver were off to expensive restaurants, laughing as they left. Soon, the weekend trips began, spa resorts, mountain lodges, beach hotels, and then one evening, as I was climbing the stairs with my laptop, she stopped me. Robin, we need to talk, she said gently. Oliver and I are going on a romantic getaway next week, just a few days. I need you to watch the boys while we're gone. The words hit me like a weight to the chest. I looked at her, the mother who once called me her whole world, and saw a stranger standing in her place. I laughed at first, thinking Mom was joking. She had to be. The stern look on her face, however, stopped my laughter dead in its tracks. Absolutely not, I said sharply, my voice cutting through the living room air. Have you seen how they behave? They're like wild animals, Mom. Almost as if to prove my point, a loud crash thundered from upstairs, followed by shrill screaming and the unmistakable sound of something breaking. Mom winced, her hand flying to her chest, but she still tried to smile. They're just active boys, she said weakly, the corners of her mouth twitching with forced calm. Active? I echoed in disbelief. Mom, they're dangerous. They fight. They break things. They have zero respect for personal boundaries. I'm not babysitting them, and I'm sure as hell not responsible if one of them ends up in the ER because they decided to throw punches over a video game controller. Please, Robin. Her voice trembled slightly as she reached for my hand. Oliver and I really need this time together. We've been planning this trip for weeks. You know how hard it's been for him to adjust to this new family. Then take them with you, I interrupted, pulling my hand free. Or better yet, leave them with Oliver's mother. Isn't she always talking about how much she misses her grandsons? Oh, she's too old to handle them, Mom replied quickly, almost defensively. And I'm too young, I shot back, crossing my arms. Besides, I have exams next week. I can't study with two Tasmanian devils running around the house. Her face softened into that familiar pleading expression she used when she wanted something. It's just a few days, sweetheart. They'll be on their best behavior, I promise. I almost laughed again, except this time, the bitterness caught in my throat. You've been saying that since they moved in. I said quietly. They haven't changed. The discussion dragged on for nearly an hour. Mom alternated between begging, guilt-tripping, and making vague promises about how things will be different this time, but I held my ground. For once, she didn't win. Finally, with a heavy sigh of defeat, she muttered something about me not understanding family responsibilities and stomped upstairs. In the end, they had no choice but to take Thomas and Peter along on their precious trip. The morning of their departure felt heavy and tense, the house buzzing with unspoken resentment. Oliver loaded suitcases into his car with exaggerated grunts, slamming the trunk closed as if the sound itself could punish me. His jaw was clenched tight, his lips pressed into a thin line. Mom's goodbye was brief, more of a sigh than a farewell. The disappointment in her eyes was unmistakable, and it stung even though I knew I was right. As their car finally disappeared down the driveway, a deep, rare silence settled over the estate. For the first time in months, I could hear the birds outside. The air felt lighter, peaceful. I made myself tea and sat by the kitchen window, watching sunlight spill across the lawns. For a few hours, I allowed myself to believe that things might finally calm down. But peace, as I would soon learn, doesn't last long in this house. When they returned from their trip, the tension was thicker than ever. Oliver barely looked at me, and Mom's smiles had turned brittle. They moved around the house like storm clouds, whispering to each other whenever I entered a room. Even their silences were pointed, laced with blame. The boys, however, were unchanged. If anything, their behavior worsened. They fought constantly, over games, over food, over the TV remote. Once, I came home to find the living room rug covered in spilled soda, chips ground into the carpet, and a shattered vase lying in the middle of it all. My mother's response: "They're just adjusting, Robin." Adjusting, that word had lost all meaning. Then came the thefts. It began subtly, a missing mouse from my desk, then my portable speaker. A week later, my favorite watch was gone. Each time I confronted Thomas or Peter, they shrugged or pretended not to hear. Mom brushed it off as kids being curious. But one afternoon, when I came home from class and found my tablet missing, I snapped. I found it hidden in Peter's drawer under a crumpled sweatshirt. My apps were deleted, replaced with endless gaming downloads. When he walked in and saw me holding it, his eyes went wide. "I was going to give it back," he muttered. "Like hell you were," I said coldly. "Stay out of my room, Peter, and touch my things again, and I'll make sure you regret it." He mumbled something under his breath, but I didn't care. I was done being polite. A week later, I came home to another outrage. Thomas and Peter sprawled on the floor, my laptop open between them, playing some mindless online game. I snatched it from their hands mid-match. "If I catch either of you touching my stuff again," I warned, "you'll be finding somewhere else to live." They looked terrified, for about 10 seconds. The breaking point came one sunny afternoon. I was walking home from campus when I spotted a woman standing in the driveway, circling my father's classic car, his pride and joy. The car gleamed in the sunlight, but something about the scene made my blood run cold. Oliver was there, leaning casually against the hood, smiling like a salesman. "Excellent condition," the woman said cheerfully. "It's perfect for my commute." "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice slicing through the air. Oliver looked startled but quickly recovered. The woman turned toward me with a friendly smile. "Oh, hi, I'm here about the car. He listed it for sale online." My heart pounded. "This car isn't for sale," I said sharply. "It belonged to my father, and it's staying right where it is." Oliver scoffed, his expression turning ugly. "You should be thanking me. I found someone dumb enough to buy this overpriced tin can. Honestly, it's a woman's car anyway. No self-respecting man would drive it." My stomach twisted. He wasn't just insulting me, he was insulting my father's memory. Turning to the woman, I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you've been misled. This car isn't his to sell, it's legally mine. I suggest you look elsewhere." The woman glanced uneasily between us before muttering a quick, "Sorry for the confusion," and hurrying away. Oliver's smirk vanished. I moved past him, got into the car, and drove it back into the garage. When I came out, I stood tall and said evenly, "Give me the garage keys, now." His jaw clenched. "You're overreacting." "Keys," I repeated, "or I'll call the police." He yanked the keys from his pocket and hurled them at my feet. They clattered against the driveway before he turned and stormed into the house, muttering curses under his breath. That night, My mother cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes blazing. "How dare you talk to Oliver that way?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of problems you're causing?" I slammed my glass on the counter. "Problems? He tried to sell Dad's car behind my back. That's not a problem, it's theft." "He was just trying to help," she argued. "That car just sits there gathering dust." "That car," I said, my voice steady but trembling with fury, "is the last piece of Dad I have left, and it's mine, just like this house. I'm done, Mom. Oliver and his sons need to leave." Her face drained of color. "You're kicking us out? Your own mother?" "No, Mom," I said softly, though my heart was breaking. "You can stay, but they can't." The silence that followed felt like a knife between us. Then her expression hardened into something cold and unrecognizable. "If they go," she said, her voice sharp as glass, "I go too." Her words hit harder than any slap, but I held my ground. "That's your choice," I said quietly. By the next afternoon, Oliver's car was back in the driveway, this time packed with boxes. Thomas and Peter shouted impatiently as they loaded the last of their things. Mom didn't look at me as she walked out the front door. She didn't even say goodbye. The sound of the car pulling away echoed through the empty driveway like the end of an era. That evening, I sat in Dad's study, surrounded by his books, the faint smell of his old cologne still lingering in the air. The house was silent, too silent. For the first time, I wondered if peace could ever truly make up for loneliness. But my gut told me this wasn't over. Oliver wasn't the type to leave quietly. I called Aiden Caleb the next morning, Dad's old lawyer and one of his closest friends. After I explained everything, Aiden sighed heavily. "This is serious, Robin," he said. "Your mother has no legal claim to the property, your father's will was airtight, but if she decides to sue, things could get ugly." "Can she win?" I asked quietly. "Not a chance," he replied, "but lawsuits aren't about winning, they're about wearing you down." He was right. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Mom. "I'm filing a lawsuit," she said flatly, "for division of property. You can't just throw us out." Her voice was so cold, so unfamiliar, that I barely recognized it. Aiden suggested mediation. "It's better than a courtroom battle," he told me, "faster, cheaper, and cleaner." The following week, we met in a sterile conference room downtown. I arrived early with Aiden. Mom arrived late, flanked by her lawyer, and Oliver, of course, sitting smugly beside her. Aiden laid out the facts calmly but firmly. "Mr. Parker's will leaves everything to Robin. The house, the car, the assets, everything. Mrs. Parker receives a monthly lifetime stipend of $5,000. That was his express wish." Oliver shifted in his chair, looking uneasy. Mom's lawyer avoided eye contact. Aiden continued, his tone almost kind. "A lawsuit would be expensive, Mrs. Parker. You could lose more in legal fees than you'd ever gain." Oliver suddenly slammed his hand on the table. "We're not backing down. She deserves." "You," Aiden interrupted smoothly, "are not a legal heir. You don't get a say." Oliver stood abruptly, face red with rage, and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. In the heavy silence that followed, Mom looked down at her hands. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, defeated. After a long pause, she whispered, "No. I don't want this anymore." Aiden slid the agreement toward her, a reaffirmation of the will's terms and a waiver of any future claims. She signed it quietly. Before she left, I handed her an envelope. "This should cover 8 months of rent," I said softly, "just until you figure things out." She took it without a word. That was 4 months ago. Now, the house is finally quiet, not the uneasy silence that used to hang between us, but a peaceful one. I'm finishing my law degree, just as Dad always wanted, and his car still gleams in the garage, polished every Sunday morning. Sometimes, I still worry about Mom. I hear through friends that she and Oliver are still together, still chasing expensive dinners and weekend trips they can't afford. But that's her choice. Dad always said, "You can't save someone who doesn't want saving." I finally understand what he meant. And as I stand in the home he built, surrounded by memories and peace hard-won, I know one thing for sure: I'm never letting anyone take this from me again.